Exploring Interdisciplinary Connections, African Elephant Populations and Biology Honors Unit Connections by Sahar and Nicole. Hi, our names are Sahar and Nicole. We created this slideshow to highlight the connections between elephants and all the units we have learned about in biology honors. We hope you learned some new, interesting ideas. The macromolecules of life are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. Carbohydrates contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a 1:1 ratio. Its monomer are monosaccharides, and its polymer are polysaccharides. Lipids. They contain carbon, hydrogen, and a little bit of oxygen. Fats and oils made of triglycerides, which means it has 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. They also can be phospholipids, which is where there's 1 glycerol and 2 fatty acids, 1 saturated and 1 unsaturated. But it has no monomers or polymers. Proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. Its monomer are amino acids, and its polymer are polypeptides. Many amino acids can form a polypeptide chain, just like how monomers are like building blocks and they make polymers. Nucleic acids contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Its monomer is a nucleotide, which contains a phosphate group, sugar deoxyribose or ribose, and nitrogen base. And its polymer, depending if it's a deoxyribose or ribose, they are DNA and RNA. And the connection back to the elephants or electrophoresis is that DNA is separated and analyzed in electrophoresis. Unit 3, Cell Structure and Function. Prokaryotic cells, they're small, they're unicellular, they have no nucleus, and they contain haploid chromosomes. Eukaryotic cells are large and complex, they're unicellular or multicellular, it has a nucleus, and there are paired diploid chromosomes. They both have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and DNA. The organelles of a cell are nucleus, which contains and protects the DNA, nuclear envelope. They let certain substances in the nucleus, so they're protecting the nucleus by controlling what goes in and out. Nucleolus, they're found in the nucleus, and they make ribosomes. The rough ER, which ER stands for endoplasmic reticulum, they make proteins and membranes for the cell, and the smooth ER produces lipids and detoxifies the cell. The Golgi body packages proteins and sends them where they need to be in the cell. Lysosomes, they contain digestive enzymes to clean the cell, like Lysol. Like if you think of Lysol as it like disinfecting, the lysosomes disinfect the cell. Vacuoles, they're vesicles that differ in animals and plant cells. And vesicles are small sacs that transport items around the cell. And the mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell, and it generates ATP energy. Chloroplasts are only found in plant cells, and they get energy from the sun for photosynthesis. The cell wall are located around the cell membrane, and they maintain homeostasis, which means it keeps the cell keeping its temperature well and keeping it surviving, maintain normal status. And then the connection is that elephant skin surrounds an elephant, like any other animal, and the cell wall surrounds a cell or the cell membrane. And so both the elephant skin and the cell wall, they maintain homeostasis for either the elephant or the cells. Unit 4, photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is when the reactants are glucose and oxygen, and the products are carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. Mitochondria is like where the arrow is, and it like transforms them, and it does the work. The first step of cellular respiration is glycolysis, and it splits the glucose to release energy of 2 ATPs. Then the next step is Krebs cycle, and it produces NADH and FADH2. Then the third step is electron transport chain, and that's like the final step where it produces all the ATPs of 36 ATPs. Photosynthesis is when the reactants are carbon dioxide and water, and the products are glucose and oxygen. Chlorophyll absorbs the light, and solar energy is transformed into glucose. So the arrow is the sunlight, so carbon dioxide and water, and then sunlight is added, and then it produces glucose and oxygen. So when the sunlight hits the plant, the chlorophyll absorbs its energy, and then it turns it into its food. So the connection is kind of like a chain reaction. So plants make their own food through photosynthesis, and then the elephants eat those plants, and that's how they get their energy. And then the elephants convert that energy through cellular respiration for the rest of the economy. Unit 5, the cell cycle and mitosis. There are 5 stages of the cell cycle. There's interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Starting at interphase, the cell spends 90% of its life in that phase. And during that phase, there are 3 steps. G1 phase is when it decides it's going to divide. And then, so it grows. And then the S phase is when it actually replicates the DNA. And then G2, it builds protein for division later. So during interphase, the cell is growing to prepare for mitosis. The ultimate goal for mitosis is that the cell divides into 2 daughter cells from 1. Starting at the first step of mitosis, prophase, is when chromatin coils into chromosomes, and then the nucleus dissolves and the spindle fibers begin to form. So the cell is preparing to split. And then in metaphase, spindle fibers are attached to the centromeres, which are on opposite sides of the cell, and the chromosomes line up in the center. So M for middle, M of metaphase could stand for middle, so it means all the chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell, connecting to the spindle fibers. And then during anaphase, the spindle fibers pull the chromosomes apart. So the centromeres are pulling the cell apart on opposite ways, and it separates the chromosomes from being in the middle. So now half of the chromosomes are going on one side and the other half are going on the other side. And then during telophase, the spindle fibers dissolve and the nucleus reforms. So the cell is like recovering itself, and then the result is that there are 2 identical diploid cells. So now that the cells split evenly, so now there are 2 identical cells. A good way to remember the steps of mitosis is the phrase PMAT, which stands for P for prophase, M metaphase, A anaphase, and T telophase. And once the cycle is over, it repeats all over again starting at interphase. This connects to electrophoresis because during the S phase, the DNA is replicated. And in electrophoresis, it's used to analyze the DNA closely. And so electrophoresis can be used for checking how accurate the DNA replication went and if everything went right or wrong. Unit 6, molecular biology of the cell and protein synthesis. The DNA is made up of nucleotides, which as said in Unit 2 before, they're made up of sugar, phosphate, and a nitrogenous base. The bases there are 4 options for the base. There are adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine. The DNA function is to encode and store genetic information. During DNA replication, the double helix strands separate into 2, and nucleotides pair with bases, so they have to repair themselves to form 2 double helixes. In protein synthesis, the DNA is transcribed to RNA, and then the RNA is translated to protein. This connects back to elephants because elephant DNA sequences, they show scientists' traits. They could show their tuskless or their tusk size, and other traits. Unit 7, Meiosis, Heredity, and Genetics. During interphase, which is before meiosis, each chromosome is duplicated. So it's like the structure of 2 cells but into 1 cell. During meiosis 1, the cell divides into 2 and it separates homologous chromosomes. During meiosis 2, that's the second cell division, and so the 2 cells divide again into 4 cells. And that separates the sister chromatids. And each cell is a haploid because it's half of a diploid. Researchers can find family relationships by comparing the DNA fragments and how similar they are. Heredity is when traits transfer and carry on throughout many generations. Genetics is a scientific study of heredity. All organisms inherit 1 allele per gene from each parent. Homozygous means that there are 2 identical alleles, and heterozygous means that there are 2 different alleles, meaning one is dominant and one is recessive. 1 allele determines the organism's trait. Dominant, which can be represented by a capital letter, overpowers the recessive allele, which can be represented by a lowercase letter. You can cross-constitute genotypes to see all the possible combinations of genes. Natural selection is when having certain traits help individuals survive and reproduce. And then these traits will become more common over time, over the years. Over many generations and many years, organisms will adapt to their environments. Evolution is when living species share common ancestors, and homologous structures are common ancestry, meaning that they have the same structure but they have different functions. The Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium determines if a population is evolving. A population is evolving if there is small population, gene flow, mutations, non-random mating, and natural selection. You can remember this by using the 5-finger rule. Evolutionary trees show common ancestors of animals. Elephants have evolved over time because of their environment. There are humans taking their tusks, and the elephants without tusks, they survive. Unit 9, Ecology. Population ecology is the study of population change. Population is a bunch of animals in a species living in the same area. Relationships between species. Mutualism is when both species benefit from each other. Parasitism is when only one species benefits and the other one is hurt. And commensalism is when one species benefits and one is unaffected. There are predator versus prey in ecology, and people can use gel electrophoresis to compare DNA in the ecosystems. For my Laudato Si slide, I picked the quote, "It is not enough, however, to think of different species merely as potential resources to be exploited, while overlooking the fact that they have value in themselves." From Laudato Si 33. Elephants are hunted mainly for their touch. Hunters only care about their ivory, since it is a resource that provides humans with wealth. So humans don't care about the elephants and only care about their ivory.